returned.
The Old Republic takes place 300 years after the events of Knights of the Old Republic, and about 3,000 years before the events of Episode 4. The biggest change from Knights of the Old Republic is the return of the Sith Empire. So there were people running around calling themselves Sith in Knights of the Old Republic, but they weren't actually Sith. This was Darth Revan, well, back before he was Darth, Revan and Malak went out into space, and something bad happened, and they both turned, and they came back and declared themselves Sith and said that they were starting a new Sith Empire, and they were supposed to, except Malak, as we know, betrayed Revan, and he took over, and he basically built his own Sith Empire and started calling everything Sith. So we had Sith troopers and Sith ships and Sith peanut butter and Sith everything. But they weren't actually culturally Sith. They were all people who had come back with them, who were Republic people who'd gone into deep space. So what it turns out is what they found in deep space that changed them and sent them back was the Emperor. And the Emperor of the old Sith from the Great Hyperspace War that the Jedi thought they had killed off. They were turned and were sent back to supposedly be the vanguard for a Sith invasion. They did a very poor job of it because they're Sith, so they betrayed each other and tried to take over themselves and did not, in fact, make a great thing for the Empire. But the Empire shows up anyway, quite a few years later, surprises the Republic all to bejeebus, and begins to just smash down a whole bunch of the outlying worlds, crushes the Republic back to a point where they have to sign a very disadvantageous treaty that they're very surprised about. And that's actually the events. So for people who've seen the trailer, the Deceived trailer, that's sort of the culmination. The sacking of Coruscant is what actually makes the Republics have to say, okay, we give. We're going to sign this treaty. And really interestingly, what the Empire makes them give them in the treaty is a whole bunch of outlying worlds that don't particularly seem to have the worth one would think. And as the game sort of starts, there's a very tentative piece and a lot of fighting happening on the edges where the treaty doesn't cover, a lot of proxy wars, everything's just starting to heat up, and the mystery of what is the Empire actually doing and what does it want is sort of the big thing that's hanging over everybody. So the two new roles we started talking about, the two new character classes, were the Jedi Consular and the Sith Inquisitor. And they both represent the, if you will, the more thoughtful side of the Force users, the people who are really interested in the mysteries of the Force, in being able to pick stuff up, throw it around. The Sith Inquisitor shoots lightning. The Consular is very much the telekinetics. They're not the charge in with the lightsaber first that the Sith Warrior and the Jedi Knight are. For players, they tend to be more, well, one of the things we talked a lot about is that the classes can play several different roles. You can take your class and you can really adapt it in different directions, but primarily these are people who want to have, I guess, a little bit more complex gameplay, people who want to control the situation a bit, people who want to really know where everything is in the battlefield and how they're going to go through it sort of more in order. So we have a lot of parallels between the classes in the fact that there is thematic underlying ideas that sort of represent Star Wars that we wanted to be able to explore on both sides. So the Trooper and the Bounty Hunter are both sort of gritty, down-to-earth. These are professional fighters. They have very different flavors because the Trooper is a military man. He follows orders, whereas the Bounty Hunter is his own man. He does what he wants. But they're both the, okay, I've got the boots on the ground. I sit in reality. The Smuggler and the Agent both have a little bit more shifting perspective on the world. They've both been down the dark paths. They're both familiar with a part of the Star Wars galaxy that very few normal people are. When you get into the Jedi and Sith, you really get the action classes of the Knight and the Warrior, who really are the, I might think about what's going on after I've jumped into the battle, but when I see a threat, I go after it. And then the Consular and the Inquisitor, who really are the people who are delving into the light side and the dark side on either side, really finding out, building alliances, really sort of looking at each of their places. At the same time, that makes them extremely different characters, because one of them is very much exploring all of the different things that create the light side, and the other one is exploring all of the different things that create the dark side. So although they're sort of analogous in their roles on their particular sides, both their stories and their play styles tend to be exact opposites. Yeah, companion characters are great because they allow us to really give the players in each class more depth. Almost a multi-classing system in the fact that each class has its own companion characters, and each of those companion characters not only has a great story role like you would have seen in any of our role-playing games, has their own content, has their own quests and all of that, but also brings to combat their own specific thing. So you could say, okay, today I'm soloing. And today I've decided I wanted to take my class in, I don't actually like to be up in the stuff, so I've taken my class in a more long-range way. So I'm really going to take my guy who, he's really more of a classic tank. I'm going to send my companion character that he's a tough guy, he's going to go out front. But my class also has some healing skills. And on Friday night, when no healers showed up, I decided, okay, great. I'm going to lean more on my healing stuff. I'm going to gear myself up to really be the healer, and I'm going to go get my healing companion character. And now I'm a medical unit. All we are is a giant medical unit moving around, and now we don't have to worry about the fact that we didn't bring the pure healer today.